One, and we are recording with Mr. John Barnwell. I was just telling him I will never be punctual and I will always be late, and you were just telling me I'm in the right line of work, and you had a conversation with who?
Uh, Max Fisher,
I don't know who.
he was a very prominent figure back in during Nixon, and he said to me one time, he said, "I won't do business with somebody who's 5 minutes late."
All
I
right.
said, "Okay, well, this is a guy who's like, you know, super wealthy, and he turned down cabinet posts with
Jeez.
5 different presidents because he told them he could be more effective just doing what he was doing."
Yeah.
And I created a database for his wife's esoteric library, a relational database. I didn't create the software, but a friend of mine did the architecture on the software, and I did the data entry so that it was a relational database, and you could look up subjects, and it would bring up what books would be relevant in the more obvious sense. And then I went on and did a similar system for her daughter's massive Egyptology and Mesopotamian Studies library. And so you could look up, say, canopic jars of the Middle Kingdom and click it in, and it would tell you which volumes to look in. And the library, just huge. And so I guess you contacted me. You wanted to do a show. You didn't say anything about what you wanted to talk about, and
Nope.
so I thought, well, what could I talk about? What could I think about before the show that no matter where he goes, the thinking I've done has some relevance. And so I thought about the idea of building a meta narrative, because that's what we're watching right now. We're seeing these globalist type uh, beta people running around trying to run herd on all the alpha personalities on Earth and get them to toe the line, right? And how do you do that? You do that by government, by journalism. And that's basically a concept that came out of the First Imperial Press Conference in London in 1909, where they had some 650 plus journalists from throughout the British Empire, plus key representatives from the United States, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Chicago Tribune, come in there, and it was like a think tank, so to speak, of how to build a narrative to be able to successfully maintain the empire as it made its transition from an empire into a commonwealth. And mind you, that's what the mindset that the US is still under colonial status as regards to corporatism and vertical integration. And so, is that obscure enough for you?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it. Go with it.
Well, you know,
Right now I'm reading The Devil's Chessboard, all about
yeah, there you go.
so this is actually right on. This is all about, yeah, empire at all costs, the power elite. Yeah, this is so perfect.
Yeah, okay. So we tend to be on the same page, probably because we both have kind of a meditative approach
Hmm.
to life. And in keeping with that, though, I want to share a quotation from the person who I consider my leading inspiration, Dr. Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian philosopher, scientist, artist. And he said, whatever one may experience, one can look with complete trust towards the future. For just as the crystal first develops out of an alkaline solution only after it has been vigorously stirred, so also something new can only develop after great upheavals. And this is something he said on November 5th of 1905. And so there's that whole idea, it gets into like people as of late have been quoting Nietzsche more often than ever, but the quote they keep coming up with, even rappers, is that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's a very insightful view on life, and that's kind of like right in keeping with the Knight Templar mindset. Is that the courage of the Templars was based on their dedication to Christ was so complete that they were not afraid of death because they were already dead, that they had
Mhm.
died in Christ, that they died into that Kyrios, that higher part of their being that is beyond space and time and is experiencing this stupendous cosmic drama that we're going through. And so, in an effort to maintain one's sanity, it's important to be able to step back and build your own meta narrative. That you don't want to let these people who really don't have any concern regarding your safety and well-being. They really don't. Some of them do because they've been fooled by the meta narrative, or they've been bought off, or they've been blackmailed, or whatever reason they're serving that narrative. But nonetheless, what you're looking at is what is your context within life as a human being? Are you even concerned with that? Do you even know what a human being is?
So what is the meta narrative we're watching in real time being formed?
Well, I mean, what they're trying to put on us is nonstop fear. I mean, if you, in case people haven't noticed, they just turn the page. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I go to the grocery store and those little strips that they had tape on the floor to show you how to distance your shopping cart by 6 feet. All of a sudden, those are all gone. What happened? You know,
Gone.
it's
She's
like,
gone.
okay, we're done like foisting this upon you, and we got a new narrative now. We got to
Ta
worry about what's going on over in Eastern Europe.
Take down the Halloween decorations. It's time for
Get
Thanksgiving
everybody,
decorations.
yeah,
Take
get
down the
everybody,
Thanksgiving decorations. It's time for Christmas.
yeah. So it's so transparent that it takes like George Webb was saying on your podcast the other day is that in the time it takes to watch a movie, you've already debunked the meta narrative. It's like
Yeah.
basically the games they're playing don't work, and this whole idea that they're going to take down the grid and all of that, they're not going to take down the grid. I mean, if they did, then they're stupider than I even thought they were, because the whole basis of their power
Is
is grid
yeah.
dependent.
Yeah. Oh, the whole thing is a carefully crafted electronic illusion.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, if you go back, I sent you that little snippet of that video of that Yuval Noah Harari
Hmm.
guy. I mean, he's a piece of work, right? He's saying that basically, in 30 years' time or so, that the humans as we know it won't exist anymore. It's like, where do these people come from? Did they actually think that you could take like the current state of the art computer system and interface it with a human being and come up with something that's viable? I mean, that's just totally retarded, right?
It's the guys in like 1900 saying we've discovered everything. Now, wasn't it one of the? I think it was one of the like the mentors to like Leo Szilard or Einstein were basically saying in like 1900 that I forget which one it is, but the quote is something along the lines of "We've now discovered everything in the universe. The only thing left to do is to kind of fine tune the measurements." These assholes in
Yeah,
top hats with Model Ts were like, "We figured it out."
yeah. And so that's the I don't know, how would you do what, hubris is a good
Yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The whole idea, and see, that's the thing that I've the hundreds of podcasts that I've done, I've been trying to kind of give people another way of looking at things so that they don't get caught up in that, because it's like that little hamster wheel. They want to keep you running on this hamster wheel and feel like you're getting somewhere when you're not really, uh, with the information they're getting is being that it's almost all false. It's what are you supposed to do with that? Well, you walk away, and that's what's happened. There's been this mass exodus from mass media. I mean, you get more views than CNN. I mean, seriously, in some of your things, you've
Some. I
surpassed
wouldn't
CNN.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't say
but
every.
but a few of them,
Sure.
and so that and you're like somebody who's just starting to rise, and there's people around that are massively beyond CNN, like Joe Rogan, for example,
Sure.
and he's starting to come to a deeper level, so that if you keep working on it, you're going to be able to build a meta narrative that's more of an open set. And that's the way I like to frame this. It kind of takes off on Georg Cantor, the mathematician that is really the source of what's called set theory, and that's the organization of characteristics to be able to come into a relationship with something. Just to give a very insufficient definition of it, but the whole idea A plus A plus B plus A, B plus B, that whole thing that I joked about on one of your previous podcasts. I told the story, but that there's an open set. And that's the radical idea that you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
And so I frequently find that I'll make conclusions about things because the innate desire for a human being to have closure, right? Aha,
Yeah.
I've figured it out.
Yeah.
And then you look into it and you realize that the guy that you're describing as a pure demon is just a guy who's a really nice guy. And were you to just go have a cup of coffee with him, you'd get along famously.
Yeah.
But yet, this guy's wrapped his head around some kind of meta narrative that it may be very elegant, but a lot of things that sound good aren't true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, like one thing I have always just hated with a passion are clickbait thumbnails on like YouTube. And there's like a whole science behind it. It's like the whites of your eyes, you have to have your mouth open. There's something about the human mind that's attracted to like more attracted to like teeth and tongues because it like something in our like deep reptilian brain thinks it's like violence is happening. You don't want to see the full head. You want the image zoomed in so you don't see like it's part of it's cropped out. There's something that does it with the brain. You want to add a white outline. You want to have bright colors that there's like a gradient of. It's all this stuff. And to me, the biggest offender of all time is Mr. Beast. I've never watched any of his videos, but he just looks like this obnoxious kid that I've always just kind of wanted to hit with a bat. And he was on Joe Rogan the other day, and I watched just a couple snippets of it, and I was like, "What a nice, cool fucking dude." He just figured out the system. He's just he's probably looking at me going, "Yeah, no, clickbait thumbnails are annoying as hell, but I make 50 million a year." And I just is just completely down to earth, no ego, just this sweet dude. He uses tons of money to just like I think he planted like 2 million trees. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I have had this my own meta, not even pushed on me by anyone, just my own. Before I even started the podcast, I was just like, "Fuck this guy, fuck his haircut," and I heard him talk for all of 5 minutes, and I was like, "What a sweet individual," and that's how I try to think of things. Is I'm like, all right, so what other meta narrative am I now holding in my mind? What if I went and fucking took mushrooms with Fauci. Well, I wouldn't do that. He's a demon. I also didn't like Mr. Beast 3 days ago. And now I still won't watch any of his videos, but I try to think about something that I truly disagree with, like a Fauci. And who knows? Maybe I'd come out of it and go, no, that guy really is just a demon. Maybe if I fucking hang out with him for 3 days and we go through his life story and I go through my life story, who's to say I don't come out on that on the other side and go, like, yeah, man, he's taken some wrong turns, but he's a human. Now, do I believe that? Not necessarily. But I think you have to keep that open mind. You have to, just because if you try to approach like an old friendship that has a grudge, just because you contact that person with an olive branch doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take it. But I think it's important for you, the individual, to still offer it. And so, yeah, I try to, that is a way to kind of frame these meta narratives is who knows? I mean, and again, that doesn't mean that everyone that you meet, all of a sudden the meta narrative is not true. You might meet someone and go, oh, the narrative's not even touching the truth. This guy's a demon. But I don't know. I don't really know why I just went on that rant, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't go nuts. I mean, because Fauci probably is a demon.
He probably is, but I think the point is you have to maintain the ability to at least exercise the idea that he's not.
Well, yeah, because and we're multifaceted. So, like the example that everybody's totally sick of being a reference, but it's noted that Adolf Hitler was very kind to children.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's pictures of him patting him on the head
Yeah. Loved it.
gently,
Loved his dog. Yeah.
and yeah, and so going back again to Rudolf Steiner, and I don't have the reference here because I didn't know we were going to go in this direction, but he once said to the effect that we're all capable of unspeakable acts of horror, and so uh, you have to acknowledge that this is something that it's not just somebody else. People want to project it. The whole idea of projection, of the Jungian concept, is that there's this other person out there that's the source of all your demons, and so you have to utterly eliminate them from the universe. It's kind of like a Marvel comic uh, perspective on life. And whereas, like, the true Manichaean view is to be able to enter into uh, a relationship with that evil and transform it from within, so that you could figuratively have somebody that's really angry at you, and they've made a commitment to themselves that the next time that they see you, they're going to kick your butt, and they come up to accomplish that task, and you hand them a box of cookies, and all of a sudden they're your buddy.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a we have a capacity to transform our universe, but half of that equation is us. See, and so uh, what can you do to make yourself more capable of being that type of an influence on your world? And that's a very important issue because it has to do with the concept of objectivity and or clear seeing, clear thinking, clear acts of will, that they're coming from this kind of clarity. It's like I remember one time I was among the very first people to meet the Dalai Lama when he came to America, and a friend of mine presented him with a question. And mind you, English isn't the Dalai Lama's primary language. He's much better now, but back then that was very early on for him. And he's listening very humbly and intently to my friend. And then he stands up and he says, more important than being smart, being clear.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like, I can't tell you how many times I've used that quote, and it's so so much to the point, because unless we have like this kind of like a sense of order, that that which we call God, St. John says God is love. Well, what is love? What does that mean? You know, does it mean that God is romantic? You know, I mean, it's really is a question in disguise, because it requires the individual to participate in order to come to an understanding of what it chooses to represent. And so, God is love, meaning that the the whole idea, if you want to participate in that higher sense of being, then you should proceed lovingly. Yeah, and so, like St. John's "Love you one another." It's said to be his last words, and so that's a very, very telling lesson, that love your enemies. That's a hard one, and but what does that mean? What can you do to be loving about them? Well, how about having a conversation instead of like, sending missiles at them? That'd be, for starters, maybe one way of looking at it.
Is there any peaceful way out of the situation in Ukraine right now? I mean, does it escalate and escalate and escalate? Or is there a way that there's a pressure release? Is there a way for Putin to save face? Is there a way for Ukraine not to get slaughtered? And is there a way for it just not to just cascade into World War III?
Well, that's a good question. And I think really one of the most critical aspects of that question, in my mind, with my extremely limited assessment, is that we should hope that Putin stays in power, because I'm sure there are much greater forces of chaos that we're not aware of, that would love to supplant him and you know put forward whatever their agenda is. And see, that goes back to what is, I think, the 10th letter of the Federalist Papers, where James Madison is talking about the concept of checks and balances in government. And he basically, and I'm paraphrasing, he says, we've managed to figure out a great deal, that we have done the checks and balances between the three branches of government and all of that. But there's one thing that we have not been able to effectively prevent, and that's factions.
Hmm.
And which is a very telling thing, because what's going on right now is we have factions that are acting beyond uh, their authentic authority, shall we say? That there's no reason at all that in the sane universe that Klaus Schwab should have the capability that he has. But nonetheless, he's spent a great deal of time and energy putting it together for him to have that kind of power. Like George Soros and all this cast of characters, and it goes back. I got a great quote from my friend Joe Visconti. And it's kind of funny. I have to find it here now. I meant to have it, but then I had to. Yeah, Joe Visconti's a buddy of mine. He ran for governor of Connecticut, and he's also a student of Rudolf Steiner's work. But they have this thing, quote yourself. At least someone will listen to you. And he said, and his quote of himself is, "My God, we have the worst people in power at the most critical time in human history." And I think that is about as clear as you could be regarding our current situation. So that being said, the political horizon looks somewhat like a milk crate falling down the stairs. I mean, it appears to be as close to random as can be, and so we just have to say, well, what is the weight of karma? What what is what do we actually deserve in the light of the universal that the particular is going to be subjected to? And so the whole thing has to do with order, and they want this globalist system of order, but the universe has its own order, and it's what was called in Latin syntagma, right? Which means orderly arrangement, and that things can be dealt with conceptually and in the world at large in an orderly way. And so you see that there's been different theoretical models that people have put forward to try and accomplish. Like one of the keys that I never hear anybody talk about this, so I'm going to bring it up because I think it's significant. There was a book written, I know it looks like
American
you got me
Empire,
on reverse
Roosevelt.
image. We have to read
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah, I can see it.
Okay. But American Empire, Roosevelt's geographer, the prelude to globalization. And it's really a remarkable study because it deals with something that most people never heard of, that there's a guy named Isaiah Bowman who lived from 1878 to 1950. And he's like the most famous geographer of the 20th century. And it says, for nearly 4 decades, Bowman operated around the vortex of state power, working to build an American order to the global landscape. An explorer of the famous Machu Picchu expedition of 1911, who came to be known first as Woodrow Wilson's geographer and later as Franklin D. Roosevelt's, Bowman was present at the creation of U.S. liberal foreign policy. A quarter century later, Bowman was at the center of Roosevelt's State Department, concerned with the disposition of Germany and heightened U.S. access to European colonies. He was described by Dean Acheson as a key architect of the United Nations. So you have these guys that are coming out with these models, geopolitical models, to serve the nexus of power. And I mean, I'm sorry, but like we're on the wrong team. We're on Darth Vader's team. The way it's starting to look like it more and more. That the Sith Lords have gotten in the corridors of power, and they're trying to drive us into the ditch. But I think your friend that was on Luongo, he's got a good point, and it's an interesting point, is that the ultimately all your traders and your money market people, well, once they start getting a closer look at this and realize the end game, I don't think they're going to want it. And I find it hard to believe that these globalists can pull this off without the friendship with Wall Street. I mean, I have a
Mm.
hard time grasping that their lies and all that, the way they're working this through the media, would be capable of overcoming Wall Street.
Yeah, no, I think he made a great point with that. Is you have these human transcendent globalists, techno Marxists who also they have to have everything on their side in order to win. And in a lot of cases they can, and they're doing it well with academia, the media, even a lot of the military and intelligence. But you're trying to have these utopian socialists have to get on board a bunch of Wolf of Wall Street types. I just don't. You're trying to convince a bunch of frat boys to vote on legislation that there should be no beer on campus. And it's like, hey man, you might be able to get them to help out with a fundraiser or whatever, but what? You you you're going to the University of Georgia and trying to outlaw football games as part of a grand scheme. You might be able to get them on board for all of it, but you get to that point, it's like the football like program at like an SEC school is the deep state of that college. If they're the one, all the money goes through them. Like they are the Illuminati of that college. Like, and so I do think that's what we're going to see is what we're going to see are factions. And anytime there's a faction, I do think it's generally better for everyone when there's not just whether it be an American led world or whether it be a communist world. I don't think one party rule is ever too beneficial. I think everyone benefits from friction and competition.
Well, that's the American system, is that whole idea of the interaction. The ultimately was framed by Fichte originally, but became famous through Hegel, the dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And so that there's that churning that goes back, it's kind of like in the Rig Veda, that the universe was created by the struggle between the devas and the asuras, churning the sea of milk, right? And which may be more true than we think, because after all, we do live in the Milky Way, but I think that if you look at it and you get at what Madison was talking about, the you can get, I don't want to get too into critical details, but there's certain forces that were working into our government that made it compatible with what has arisen its head as corporate interests. And anytime there's a centralization of power, it could be very much a bad thing. I mean, if you look at, for example, the pre-Christian Northern European culture had to do with a group of 12 surrounding one individual in the center. And that each one of the 12, it's, for example, in the Knights of the Round Table, the 12 Knights of the Round Table around King Arthur. But it becomes problematic if that one guy, he's not a nice guy. He's like a Klaus Schwab or a George Soros, you see. And so when you centralize things, you leave yourself vulnerable. See, and that was the checks and balance. That was the whole idea, that nobody in government would be in possession of so much power that it could become inverted. And then what we're seeing now is an inversion of power, so that you have government now is diametrically opposed to serving the interests of the people. I mean, that's a pretty frightening thing to think about. But the checks and balances are there on paper. Whether or not we can get anybody who isn't blackmailed or bought to be able to proceed, that's the challenge. Well, like what happened recently with Pfizer, they put in for a 75-year sealing of their documents, and one judge comes up and says, no way. And so what happens, in excess of 500 pages come out that show that there's some, I believe it's 1,213
Side effects.
various side effects or conditions that can arise from getting the jab. I mean, that's why they had to change the narrative. I mean, that's why all said, oh, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Oh, no, you don't need those little strips on the floor to show somebody how far 6 feet is. See? So they had to change the narrative to meet the challenge. It's so transparent that people are figuring things out, and like George Webb said the other day, in less time than it takes to watch a movie, they've already been debunked. So that's where we're living right now, and so it is kind of like a roller coaster ride, and figuring out, how bad is this going to get?
Yeah, it's what do you think about and actually might be having George Webb on today for an impromptu episode. This is the shittiest water bottle ever. It won't open and it won't close. Um what do you think about? I mean, yeah, in terms of narrative falling apart faster and faster. I mean, it was like less than 7 days ago that they started the censorship around Ukraine, just like they did with COVID and the 2020 election. There were things you weren't allowed to say, and whereas the COVID it's still up. If you talk about ivermectin, you'll get banned from YouTube. But this this has been an incredibly shortened uh, lifetime of narrative creation, maintenance, and dissolution. It was less than a week. If you said there are U.S. biolabs in Ukraine, that's a conspiracy theory and misinformation. To about a couple days later, they said there are some research institutions. To a couple days later, they said they are some U.S. Biolabs, but they're not offensive in nature. To finally, I think yesterday, them saying we can't let the Russians take control of these because we are researching weaponized smallpox and anthrax. I mean, does it not almost feel like? I mean, it almost feels like there's like a god or a quantum AI in charge, and it's going, how can I wake up the populace? I could tell them the world's run by demons, but they're all in cognitive dissonance. What if I just show them the first COVID narrative? That one took 2 years. That was narrative breaking 101. And now we're going to move on to a quicker course. I'm going to show them military industrial complex propaganda, and it showed us in 7 days. Like, it almost seems like there's something that's like, all right, mom and dad can tell you don't drink too much, but it's not until you drink way too much the first time and you're throwing up all night and you're hungover for 2 days that you go, oh, don't drink too much. I mean, man, you can tell everyone that everything's a narrative and that the media has been controlled by the CIA since the 50s and that all these, deep state revolving door powers don't have you in mind, or you just show them. Banned from Twitter 7 days later, making a formal press conference. Still not awake? All right, we'll go to class 103. We'll go to class 104. Like, the classes will continue until you pass. So, like, it's like what Joe Rogan used to say about like early 20 teens. He would always say on his podcast, it almost feels like the universe is fucking with us. It's just trying to get us to wake up without overtly telling us to wake up. And it throws things in here now and again, right? The big one is we live on a rock revolving around a star. Like, some people wake up with that. But if you don't wake up, it'll keep throwing you things that are a little more and more obvious. And he was like, a guy named Anthony Weiner gets caught sending dick pics. Still not waking up? All right, we're going to keep the ride going. It almost feels like, keep the ride going. Like, you're not awake yet. All right, another go around. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Well,
I
and
don't know.
that's kind of the beauty of it,
Yeah.
and it almost makes you think, in spite of all the horrid events that are transpiring. Well, Obama had 7 different theaters of warfare going on at the same time,
Mm.
right? And so we fold these things then, we close up the lawn chair and we
Walk
pull our
back
armies
inside.
out of Afghanistan, and so what happens? Well, these guys, they want to use their stuff. They want to sell their stuff. So
Yeah.
what do we do? Oh, great. Well, let's get rid of this COVID stuff and we'll go screw with these people over here. And that's basically what we're looking at, is this whole idea of this empire mentality, and that having a warfare economy. And so you get into, like, if you go back to like the dialogues of Plato, which are so central. I mean, the Republic, the whole idea of Republic comes from Plato, right? But an early translator of Plato's writings was Thomas Taylor, a British individual who was very influential on the American transcendentalists because they read a lot of his translations, and his translations, while you might be challenged by certain Greek scholars, nonetheless, they have incredible footnotes. And so this guy had a deep grasp of Neoplatonic thinking and the relationship of philosophy to the ancient mysteries and all of that, right? But in there, there's this one point that really sticks out like a big red herring in his translations because, see, Socrates, he didn't give you answers. If you look at it, the whole idea of the Socratic dialogue is that he'll ask a question and then one of his students will reply, right? And that's the way it continues throughout. So he's not trying to like give you doctrines like, say, the Buddha. The Buddha's like telling you this is the way to do it. So if you do what I did, then that'll work. And so people that are Buddhists, they want to become more like Buddha.
Mm.
Whereas with Socrates, he's trying to get you to be more like yourself, see, which is a inherently Western way of looking at things. But in the dialogue, uh, he says "sigure," okay, which Thomas Taylor translates it as certainly, but it would really be more accurate to translate it "it seems so," which would be uh, "etzifanite." And so it seems so. It's that whole idea of the open set that you don't have all the information yet. So there's no point in closing your mind off and thinking you've got it figured out, and then go around and yell at people and try to bully them into seeing the world the way you do, which I'm getting that kind of feedback from time to time from individuals because they're certain that it's this group over here or that group over there, and it's easy for us to get caught in that whole thing when you understand an important point that Rudolf Steiner had made about the Bolshevik Revolution. He says part of the difficulty, and I'm paraphrasing, is that the type of consciousness that Tsar had is very much the same as the consciousness of the Bolsheviks. That whole like kind of abstract, rational way of looking at the world, and that is not significant enough or expansive enough to be able to allow input from a higher order of being. See, and that's where you get into the whole idea of Plotinus, the Neoplatonic philosophers, the ideas of the good, the true, and the beautiful. That's the ideal human is a person who lives in service of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And if you look at Plotinus himself, he was so respected. It was in a decadent period of Rome. Rome was just having these weird, bizarre, drunken orgies, and it was just totally going into decline and excess. Yet you had Plotinus, and the richest people in Rome, they would pick Plotinus to be the executor of their estate and custodian of their children should they die. And he actually had a couple hundred or so children in his care that he would attend to and make sure that their estate was transferred to them properly and managed. He was, I mean, what an incredible self-sacrificing individual he was. In spite of the darkness of that time, you have this guy who I'm sure he must have glowed in the dark. He was so profound. And so you see, you could be that guy. You don't have to be one of these other guys who's trying to bully other people into being what you think they should do. See,
Mm.
and that's the world that I feel we're living in now, because we've been given so much latitude as far as human activity that we can literally drive it right into the ditch. We have the freedom to do that, see? Or we can find a way forward that is a redemption of human destiny. See? And so the jury's not in yet. There is that freedom, I believe. But when you look at freedom, you say, well, what does that mean? And I'm of the ilk that I think that what Rudolf Steiner again said is so important is that the freedom in a human being is in the realm of thought. If, and that's the big if, because you won't find it in abstract rationalism or materialism. There's no freedom there. And that was the struggle of Schiller in his letters on the aesthetic education of man, because he said there's two fundamental aspects of a human being. There's that drive of nature, and then there's the structure of reason. And if we follow either one of those dictates, we're not free. And that the artist is the individual that can balance that mental principle of order, reason, and the chaotic force of driving of nature. And so, what can you do? And he said that a human being is most completely human when he's at play. And so it's that whole idea of the delicate balance. And that, but yet Rudolf Steiner took it a step further and said, well, it is possible to find freedom within the realm of thought and in the realm of will, not just in the realm of feeling like Schiller had accomplished. See, so that there is a way forward, but it's an individual way, and that's the thing that people have a hard time with, because they want to by nature try and work in a clique or a herd or a group or a faction, and there's that innate tendency that's a carryover from our past where we were tribal in nature and all of that. But this is the time of the individual. This is the time for individuals to be able to state who they are as an individual, irrespective of what group they belong to. I don't care what your religion is or your philosophical background. You could find a greater sense of this human element, that to be truly human. I mean, the word human is like a hue is like light, and man is like manas in Sanskrit, the thinking principle. So it's like the light of the thinking principle, and that's the something that we're looking for, because like in the Bhagavad Gita they talk about the Daivi Prakriti. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it's like the higher level of Prakriti, and Prakriti is like the origin or natural form or primary substance of things, right? That's the inherent isness. And the higher Prakriti is like the light of the logos. And like in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. That whole idea that it's our destiny to strive towards embodying that principle, to, like St. Paul says, not I but Christ in me. That we have to come to a point at which we realize that the only viable human way to move forward is through the guiding principle of conscience, which is the active nature of love.
So in a sense, it really doesn't matter when you're alive or what's going on. You can be you can be the best you, whether you're on a sinking Titanic or whether you're in the decline of Rome or whether you're in 2022. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, because what I'm the way I'm discussing this is not something that a medieval philosopher would have said. I mean, that's not in his toolbox. The type of thinking that we're capable of at this time in the what's called the age of the consciousness soul, that's been the modern era since like 1414. I work with astronomical cycles of the precession of the equinox and the ages and all of that, esoteric Christian scheme or syntagma, right? This ordering, but it's not my ordering; it's the order of the universe itself. There's in the Platonic great year, there's 25,920 years according to the classical version of it, and that's 1 degree precession of the equinox every 72 years. Well, you take on average 25,920 breaths in a day. And so a human life is considered, about 72 years.
Yeah.
And so we're a part of an order already. We don't have to superimpose one. We're living in one. A cube has 12 edges, period. It
Yeah.
doesn't have 13 edges, right?
Yeah.
And so there is this inherent wisdom that the universe is not random, that it's living result of the activity of beings. That's one of the primary considerations that Rudolf Steiner works from, is the whole idea of the understanding of the angels and the archangels and the archai and the curiotities, or the exousiae curiotities. I got in the wrong order now. I keep inverting it. It's the exousiae dunamis curiotities, and then thons, seraphim, cherubim. And so there's that whole order of 9 hierarchy that is in his teachings a reality, and that's the biblical tradition that leads back to Dionysius, the first bishop of Athens, who was the student of St. Paul. And so people that come in from perhaps a fundamentalist viewpoint and try to conflict with what I'm referring to, well, it's all throughout the Bible. I mean, angels are cropping up all over the place. What is that? Yeah, are there really actually people that know how to relate to that realm? And the answer is yes. And they're called initiates, and Rudolf Steiner is one of them, and he's not the only one. I mean, there was Stylianos Sateslis in Cyprus, there was Peter Dunov in Bulgaria. Those are, along with Rudolf Steiner, 3 of the leading representatives of the esoteric Christian impulses in the last 100 years or so. And so that's what I work on, and I don't imply that anybody it has to be their way of looking at things, but that's what I'm working.
So what lesson are we going to learn then from what's going on right now? What is there to be learned from this?
Well, St. Paul said, "Ye shall be as the angels." That basically, if you pull it off, being a human being to where you can accomplish what Rudolf Steiner describes as a spirit of freedom and love, that you graduate from being a human, and then the next stage of the evolution of consciousness after the end of the earth as we know it is that we enter into the angelic realm, that we get to become angels, and after that archangels, and after that archai, and that the whole system of ordering is continually evolving. That's the beauty of it. Like what in my conversation with Thomas Benyakia, the spokesman for the Hopi elders, when I told him that Earth is the 4th world, and he said, "Yes, that's what we say in our teachings too." So this is not just something that Rudolf Steiner dreamt up. And mind you, if you look at his body of work, is 36 and a half feet of shelf space for the Gesamtesgabe, the collected edition, which includes over 6,000 lectures and over 50 published books and articles and numerous plays, works of art, stupendous works of architecture. I mean, you look at just the output of this individual, and you look at it like I have for the last 50 years and realize that it's entirely internally consistent, and that you couldn't confabulate and be consistent. So
Yeah.
there's something behind what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's truth, right? You can't keep the COVID narrative going about vaccines because you're gonna get caught up in your lie versus just like there are certain truths. Like biological science is it just is what it is. And you can't the consistency is because it wasn't there was no narrative, there was no whip, there was no getting everyone in line to toe the line. Just is. It just is. You don't there's no marriage of corporation and state to ensure that the sun rises tomorrow. It's just gonna fucking do it.
Well, that's just it. And when you get into, like, say, for example, the Frankfurt School, that whole group of uh, trying to control the narrative and push it into a socialist direction. It's like that's infiltrated the academic institutions all over America, and so you got these people in education, educating our kids and trying to control them and manipulate them, and it's pathetic what's going on in education. And it really strongly goes back to when President Carter created the Department of Education, that there would be a federal central command for education, which is completely different from the real tradition of Plato's Academy and the Lyceum of Aristotle, because it's that whole idea of Socrates, again, going back to him asking questions and let the person come to it out of their own being as to, you know, is this true? Well, it seems so, right? Because we don't have all the information. So going back to what you're saying about science, that whole idea of that there's such a thing as settled science, that's, I say BS. There isn't.
No.
Because, why is it that if it's settled science, then why
Why
is it
why does it
every
why do you gotta bring it up? Settled.
yeah, every year they got to come out with a new and improved edition because it's not settled.
Well, no, they just no, it's this is settled science. This one's more settled.
Yeah.
This one's more
And
settled.
so,
It's like a
well,
geologic layer.
it goes back to what you were saying about inventions. It's like I remember the back when I was assistant in a laboratory doing research on the heart and about how the heart has a rotational movement
Uh-huh.
that causes the vortex movement of the blood. And Dr. Cowan was part of that circle of people that I was working with, but I was Ralph Marinelli's lab assistant and doing the original work on that, which eventually got published. But the whole idea that the heart has a rotational movement, but after the work came out, a lot of these doctors they're talking like they already knew that.
Yeah.
Well, if you already knew that, why didn't you say it?
Yeah.
Well, it's because it represented a truth that, but it hadn't crossed their mind to make that truth significant. Because I remember Dr. George Goodhart was a friend of mine, and he used to call me the only other guy he knew who understood the motion of the heart, and that's a big step. But the whole idea that it's rotating, because see, another friend of mine, when he was born, Dr. Goodhart, who's the father of kinesiology, muscle testing and all that stuff, that comes from him. And he was an amazing guy in his 80s. He looked like he was 50 and had the clearest eyes of anybody I knew. But he would say, my friend said that when he was born, he had a problem with his heart and they had to crack his chest open. And Dr. Goodhart massaged his heart and got it moving again. But he noticed when the heart started beating that the motion was rotational, which was like a big, okay, well, why is that? What's the point of the rotational motion of the heart? And you could say, well, what's the point of the rotational motion of the
Yeah,
galaxy?
yeah.
Everything's got this kind of rotational activity. I mean,
Yeah.
if you get, I studied Aikido for many years, and they talk about ki, and people like to describe ki like it's this particular energy. But my Aikido instructor would say, well, ki, the way in which the universe moves. Okay. And when you go back to C.G. Harrison, he said, all things arise from vortices. Okay, so that whole idea of the vortex. And you can tie that into that whole idea of orderly arrangement I discussed earlier, of syntagma. And then you can tie that into the precession of the equinox with the 25,920 breaths in a day representing roughly the rotational axis of the earth going backwards through the zodiac one time in roughly 25,920 years. And so you see that there's this whole harmony that's
Mhm.
happening that we participate in, and that we have a freedom of movement within this harmony within certain constraints. I mean, if it's raining outside, you're going to have to take an umbrella or you're going to get wet,
Yeah.
but you can go outside. See, so it's not like we're imprisoned in this
Yeah.
in the sense of certain fatalistic kismet, like they talk about in Islam. That whole idea of the fate. It's the will of Allah. Well, okay, it's the will of Allah, but you can't tell me that it didn't have to go that way. But it did go that way. So yeah, I guess okay, I'll give you that. I'm just questioning whether or not the human activity that resulted in that particular activity occurring at all, what's the nature of freedom? And that's where you get into like the individual that occupied most philosophers 100 to 200 years ago is Immanuel Kant's critique of pure reason. And you get into that whole idea. And the whole there's a whole series of philosophers, all of which trying to figure out what is the will, what is free will, what is freedom. Is freedom free? Is it really something? Do we really have freedom? And Rudolf Steiner, through his own path, was able to find that in this book, The Philosophy of Freedom, that's also translated, the title is The Philosophy of Spiritual Activity, that it's through that principle that we find our greatest freedom.
I was just kind of thinking, and I can do about five more minutes. I actually have an impromptu episode coming up in 10 minutes with George Webb. And speak of the devil, I was just thinking about vortices, and it's like you can almost see like the imprint, like the double helix. It's not like an up and down ladder. It's like the entire thing is just twisting. It seems like it really is, right? I mean, there's electron spin, and then the electrons themselves are orbiting. Like they're spinning, but they're like the Earth is spinning, but the Earth is also orbiting the sun and doing revolutions. Electrons are spinning and they're orbiting. And it's the Earth is spinning and it's orbiting. The moon is spinning and it's orbiting us as we're spinning and orbiting the sun, which is spinning and orbiting the center of the Milky Way, which is being pulled along in local clusters and super clusters, and or the local groups, and then the clusters and super clusters, and the super clusters are pulled into galactic filaments and voids. And it does seem to be that there is this sort of just dancing, there is like this massive choreographed dance going on. And like you can kind of just, if you want, you can kind of, it's like you're on like a river, you're on like a raft. There's one of my favorite quotes I used to have like hung up on my wall during like the hardest times of my life, like the worst couple of years, 2014, 15. And it was at a certain point, and it was comparing life to like a river. Because at a certain point, you stop kicking, you lift your legs up, and you let the river carry you home. And it's like at a certain point, it's like you can stop because that doesn't mean be limp. That doesn't mean don't stand for anything. But there's like a much subtler, like, row with the current, not against it. And there's a beauty to that.
Yeah, there's a skill too.
Yeah. It's like sailing.
Ramdas, your
It's like,
buddy,
yeah, it's
your
my favorite.
mentor of sorts, he tells that story. I don't know whether I've discussed it with you before. I don't recall, but the story of a surfer that he met who was out on a tropical island that he moved there, was living off of just foraging off, eating coconuts and fishing and whatnot, and he would just meditate and then go out and surf. But he was on this island because it had the perfect waves, and he could just, on any given day, just sail for just a tremendous length because of the depth of the shore as it went into the ocean, so that he could paddle, a mile or two out and then ride waves into this island. But one day a tidal wave showed up, right? And so what's the guy going to do? Well, he rode the tidal wave. But see, he had the skill to
Yeah.
be able to do that. And so he was able to ride it and eventually get to the top. And then, they go over the top and you can ride down. And there was a series of smaller and smaller waves behind that. But because he had the skill, he could do that. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could do that or not.
No.
But the point is that there is a certain skill involved, and that there is training that one can do to be able to fortify and strengthen one's capacities to be able to be accommodating to circumstances that arise. And if you're well adjusted, if you're not totally benighted by like, I don't know, PTSD or what have you. I mean, you look at what people are struggling with, and they're basically trying to put the world into a state of PTSD, that we're in a traumatic state. And so we're not going to be able to function in our full capacities. And so what we need to do is to get in our toolkit methods like you have your meditation and whatnot, that will give us the capacity to be able to not get caught in sympathy or antipathy, because you're only going to find clarity if you can get beyond sympathy and antipathy, like and dislike. Then you can look at, when you meet a person, instead of like, oh, I don't like their green jacket, or I mean, we automatically go into judgment.
Yeah.
And that's what that does, is that kind of prevents us from getting into clarity, is the things that we like, the things that we don't like. If we can just rise above that sympathy and antipathy, that's really out of the realm of feeling, and that, like, you'll think something through, but ultimately it's in the realm of feeling that you make a decision.
So,
But is there clarity in feelings when there's excessive emotion? Feelings and emotions are not the same thing. They're in the same realm, but see, feeling is a cognitive, it's a perception. Emotion is a response. See, so you have to clarify your emotions. If you can clarify your thinking, then that's the third eye, two-petal lotus. Clarifying feeling is the logos principle. That's the 16-petal lotus that Buddha accomplished so well. And then you have the 12-petal lotus of the heart. That's the will, and that's that love. Can you bring that to the table? Can that be your operating principle? And that's a challenge. I didn't say any of this stuff was easy, but at least if you have some idea what you're dealing with, you're going to find that these are valuable things to know.
so Putin invading Ukraine is kind of the tidal wave. How are we gonna
Yeah,
how are we gonna surf it? How are we gonna surf it?
yeah. And is he invading? Is he really invading Ukraine, or
I
is he
don't
just
know.
taking out biolabs?
We don't know. The
You
plot
know,
thick that I have now had on people that have definitively said he's a Russian aggressor and he's slaughtering, and I have people said that he's defending his country. That people that said this is all World Economic Forum charade. I've had others say he's fighting the World Economic Forum. I'm trying to take in all the data points. I'm trying to figure. I think that's how I surf though, is I take in data points.
yeah,
I try to keep my mind open to all of them, and that allows me. That's my surfing. Is yeah, yeah,
yeah. If you don't get fooled by the sense of closure, aha, I figured it out.
yeah. That's the red flag. It's this simple. The science is settled, and Putin's a Nazi. And I'm like, well, maybe he is. Maybe again, even what we said earlier about Fauci. If you and I conclusively go, no, he's an evil guy, that's our own closure. That's our own. Is the
Well, it
universe
reminds
not?
me of Trump. He's talking about I believe the Treasury Secretary that he got rid of. He said he's a nice guy, but he's a globalist. But he's a nice guy. It's like just because somebody's a demon doesn't mean you wouldn't have fun playing golf with them. You know, I mean,
Doesn't mean you
it's
might
that
not
kind of
have fun.
world.
You might doesn't mean you might not have fun being a demon with them.
Well, keep in mind, okay, because the first person to recognize Jesus Christ, that he was the Christ, was Saint Peter. But yet, not much time goes by, and what happens? That
Betrays them 3 times.
well, yeah, but he also pipes up in the conversation. Peter does, and Christ says to him, "Get thee behind me, Satan."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So we're all capable of falling off the horse. That doesn't mean we shouldn't get back on, but we should try and check ourselves and see, are we really, is this really truth? Or is it just some caricature of truth that we're choosing some meme that we've wrapped our heads around and we're gonna, like bully other people into agreeing with us? I mean, that's a real challenge.
It's not easy. It's not
Well, I
fucking
can't
easy.
thank you enough. I have a tremendous regard for your fluidity. You have this capacity to wrap your head around diversity, which I think is meaning diversity in thinking. I don't mean in the
I mean,
Persian
I've got some nice diversity hires on my
Me Too,
podcast.
Me
I
Too
my
version of
my
it.
inclusive podcast studio, my many gendered employees. It's just me. This is the most. There's no diversity here. It's a monarchy. It's a one man dictatorship. But you can't really criticize it because I'm not dictating over anybody. It's I mean, I'm just gradually losing my mind as as I do more and more episodes. But yeah,
Well, it goes back to 2001. That monolith. What is that thing?
yeah, yeah. That's oh fuck. I was trying to think of something I saw with that.
Or
There's some
Stanley Kubrick. I mean,
yeah,
talk about a guy. I mean, guy's an absolute genius, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's real clear. And he presaged so many things that we're going through in so many of his movies. It's like he's been warning us, all along.
What if there is like a monolith in Ukraine and they're going in to get it?
Well, yeah. What, so we got to start worrying about the black goo all over again?
You're right. Then it's going to be the next thing. Like we cannot let the Russians get the monolith. We need the monolith. And it's like, what the fuck is going? Hold on. Fuck all. Turn the TV off. Fuck COVID. Fuck World War III. I'm gonna go chop some firewood. Fuck all you. Like we we must get. Everyone's gonna change their picture to the monolith. We got to get the monolith first. What are you? Are
Yeah.
you with Putin?
Well, there is that, and it goes back to this the whole idea of the spear of destiny and all that. And there's the spear of Antioch. That was the my one of my oldest ancestors I traced back was Roger de Bonville, and he was beheaded at the gates of Antioch, right? And once they won the Antioch, they is said that they were able to get the spear of Longinus, which is the spear that pierced the side of Christ and released the blood of Christ to enter into the earth. Now, whether or not the spear of Antioch is the actual spear of Longinus, the spear of Antioch, it's in possession of some people that I know, is of the proper metallurgy. It's the proper type of spear, and it would have been carried in the first crusade, and so there are totems that represents something, and it's not nothing. There are sacred relics that represent something, and a lot of times the power of the relic is that there's people that believe that it has that power, and that it's actually, if they really knew, that wasn't the real relic, but yet it empowered them. It gave them a sense
Mm-hmm.
of fortitude to be able to move forward. And so I think there's that whole totem uh, concept that is still relevant, and that's that mimetic thing again. And you have to be very careful with these things, because they tend to work into you on an unconscious level, so that you have things that are working in you that are unconscious. I'm trying to get people to be more conscious. I'm not trying to send means into them to hypnotize
Just
them.
yeah, I don't want to dominate anyone. Yeah. I want them to be totally aware.
And that's like the shortfall of ritual work, like Freemasonry, for example.
Yeah.
Those symbols all mean something, but uh, good luck. Go to a Masonic lodge and trying to find somebody that actually knows what they mean. Well, I've written 2 books, and they will tell you what all that stuff means. The Arcana of the Grail Angel, which is spiritual sides of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, a study developed out of the work of Rudolf Steiner, the underground streams of esoteric Christianity, which flowed from the Brotherhood of the Holy Grail to the Order of Knights Templar and the True Rosicrucian Order, some 640 pages. And then there's the Arcana of Light on the Path, which is more of a meditative tool. And included in them are extensive diagrams that lay out this cosmology, the meta narrative that's involved in these things, and I have them available. I have a limited number of copies left, and you can get them on eBay from me directly, or you could send me a private message on Facebook or through my academia link. And I almost forgot to mention that. It's part of what I do. I'm an author, and but I have so much fun talking to Tommy that I almost forgot to mention it.
I wasn't gonna, if you didn't bring it up, I was gonna plug it. That's my expertise. I was gonna say you should put those on Audible, man. I think you should narrate them.
Well, I thought about it.
I really do think you should. You have a good voice, and people like me devour audiobooks. I have the attention span of a squirrel when it comes to reading books. Audiobooks, I can take down a 30-hour book, a dense tome. Reading, I can barely read like the directions to like a microwavable dinner. So it's
You're probably right. Well, you'll have to send me links to so I can get that up to Steam, because I conceptually hear what you're saying, but I'm unaware of the platform.
Audible. Yeah, it's just audiobooks. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's audiobooks, but I assume what you're referring to is a specific platform.
Oh yeah, yeah, Audible, Audible. It's owned by Amazon, but it's kind of
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's part of the big evil corporation, but it's like it's the best one, best quality, easiest to use. It's where they all are. Um, yeah, but Mr. John Barnwell, another roller coaster of a podcast. We will absolutely do another one. And yeah, so all those links will be in the description as always. And I will send this to you when it's up and have you spread it around as I shamelessly ask you to plug my podcast. And aside from that, closing thoughts.
Uh, I've, for once, I'm at a loss for words. So I guess we get into meditation is the cessation, the modification of the
Meditation.
mind.
Meditation is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. The title of our first episode. Fuck yeah. Mr. John Barnwell, thank you, sir. thank you for coming on here. Always a pleasure to talk. And actually, in Sunday, Leo Zagami, part 2. So
Oh yeah,
that one's gonna be exciting. But
yeah, he's always fun.
he is. He's a character. I love him. But for now, let's wrap this one up. I hope George Webb's showing up. He should show up, unless the CIA's finally killed him, which isn't out of the realm of possibility because George has been talking about Ukrainian biolabs for years now. But
Well, I think he has a dead man switch somewhere.
oh, yeah, I hope he does.
Yeah,
I bet he does. George isn't stupid.
yeah.
I hope so.
Well, he's SIS, so I don't see why he wouldn't.
He probably is Klaus Schwab. He's gonna take off his mask during one episode, and it's gonna be Klaus, and I was playing both sides all along.
He's got a background in the senior intelligence service,
Yeah,
and he doesn't talk about it.
yeah, I know.
But that's why he has a lot of the capabilities that he has. It's
Yeah.
just a question. I don't endorse people. I endorse ideas, and so people ask me what I think about this or that person, and I tell you what I'll tell you about most anybody, including yourself, is that I agree with you when I agree with you, and I disagree with you when I disagree with you. And I hope that we can get together sometime and share a cup of coffee.
Fucking right. Beautifully said. Mr. John Barnwell, let's wrap this shit up. I'll send it to you. Everybody else out there, stay safe. God bless. And pray the World War III away. Maybe it'll work. I don't know.